Welcome to the next episode of the Virtual Power Teams podcast. And today we have an exciting guest, Aneta Key from the Silicon Valley, from San Francisco. And she's Bulgarian. In fact, both of us are proud Bulgarian, living abroad for 20 plus years, but still having strong Bulgarian roots and Bulgarian hearts. Traveled the world, worked with global teams, but still having a Bulgarian heart beating. So Aneta she's a strategic consultant with rich experience. She will tell us more. Went through Wall Street, you name it, and now consulting global companies on a strategic level. She's a TED speaker. I'm a speaker and I love the stage, and she had the honor, to conquer the TED, not the TEDx, the real TED stage. And she is a passionate Argentine tango dancer. In fact, that has to do with her TED talk. So we have an exciting guest, really, with a strategic mind, Bulgarian heart, and an Argentinian tango body. So you can just look forward to our conversation. Aneta, welcome to our podcast. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you. Very lovely to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation. Who am I? Man, you start with the existential questions, don't you? My name is Aneta Key. I'm a strategy consultant based out of San Francisco, serving global clients. I work with organizations of all shapes and colors to what I say increase leadership capacity to accelerate growth. But pragmatically, what I do is I work with companies in three ways as a consultant. Which means either I help large initiatives being structured and ushered and executed, or I work with individual leaders behind closed doors as a trusted advisor. The second way I work with companies is a facilitator, where I design and lead decision-making, prioritization, problem-solving sessions with groups of people. And the third way I work with organizations is as a trainer. Since I've had the practice of training analysts, associates, managers in consulting and outside of consulting, and building capabilities to handle change is an evergreen topic. So for me, that means evergreen demand by clients to help out on that front. Beyond client work, I actually like to raise the level of all professionals out there. So I write blogs, I give seminars, I participate in podcasts, and I basically try to help everyone out there.
Fantastic, fantastic. Great to have you here. And why you do what you do? I usually ask this question because many people try to become now self-employed, to be a business owner, go on a strategic level. But when the obstacle comes, sometimes there is enough wind in the sails, and usually the strong why can bring you and get you through the obstacles. Why you do what you do? All these 3 years.
Why do I do? Uh, Well, in a way, it's a very hedonistic expression of my personal interests. So, from very young age, I've been fascinated with problem solving, solving puzzles, solving math problems, solving linguistic riddles, whatnot. And basically, what I do day to day is I'm solving puzzles. That's number one. The second thing about me is I'm a learning junkie. I
Mhm.
get bored faster than a goldfish. So I need to be jumping on a new learning curve or in a new client situation, new problem all the time.
Mhm.
And the third thing is coming from a family of many generations of educators.
Mhm.
I truly believe that our mission in life is to bring up everybody else along with us. So
Mhm.
while I'm learning, I try to bring everybody else to learn. So in a way, I have a very, very, uh, yeah, a great place to self-express while doing good in the world.
Fantastic. Having, realized your passions into your work and loving what you do. Now, let's look a little bit into global and virtual teams. That's the core of our podcast. And you have rich experience in virtual collaboration and working with global teams. What from your perspective, is the key success factors for effective virtual collaboration?
Yes, virtual and global teams have been around for a long time. I just want to get that one straight.
Mhm,
You wrote your book years ago,
mhm,
and I remember Polycom conference call faux pas from the late 90s, right? So virtual teams have been around for quite some time. What we have now is we've moved in a different point of the adoption curve, and now everybody is in a virtual situation.
mhm,
So with that, I would, let's see, there are many, many success factors, but maybe for the purposes of today, let's focus on the idea of clear communications and enabling collaboration by being explicit,
mhm,
explicit, deliberate. And let me just define what I mean by explicit. If you look at the dictionary,
mhm,
explicit is defined as stated clearly in a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation, right?
mhm, mhm,
In reality, this has so many manifestations, from being crystal clear on what you're saying, especially when you're dealing with technological issues and multicultural situations, to being very, very explicit around tactical stuff. So if I say, Peter, let me ping you, and
mhm.
I'll ping you at 3.
Yes.
This may sound like it's explicit, but in today's life, I have to specify which channel I'm pinging you in. Is this Slack? Is this voice? Is this video? Which video platform? I have to specify which time zone.
Mhm,
And if I really live up to the explicit rule, I would explicitly state why I want to ping you, what's my objective,
mhm,
and how long do I want to us to talk, so that you can practice, you can plan your time accordingly. All these are manifestations of being explicit.
yes.
Stepping back, a team,
Mhm,
virtual team especially, has to have explicitly stated objectives,
mhm,
explicitly stated roles and responsibilities, and who is doing what,
mhm,
explicitly stated team norms in terms of when are our synchronous times, when are our asynchronous times, what's our technology stack, if you wish, which tools we are using, and we are all on them, which tools are everybody does their own thing. um, I think anything goes as long as we have an explicit understanding of what's going on.
yes,
And maybe
absolutely.
another angle would be in terms of problem solving, because that's my sweet spot. For a good problem solving, this is where a bunch of people come together to address the same questions.
Mhm,
You need to have explicitly stated objectives. So, what's the problem statement we are trying to work on? You have to have explicitly stated approach. So, this is my way of thinking about it
mhm,
explicitly, and explicitly stated assumptions. So
yeah,
instead of, you can imagine a team meeting in which somebody says, I did the analysis and I think the answer is 3. There
mhm,
is nothing much others can contribute to that discussion. But if you say, hey, this is the question, this is how I broke it down into the 3 sub
mhm,
questions, this is how I'm going about it, here is my
mhm,
spreadsheet
yeah,
logical driver tree, does this
mhm,
work, and here are my assumptions and why I think that they're reasonable, does this work? And when we put all this together, the answer is 3.
yeah,
Now, because you've made your logic and thinking and approach and assumptions explicit, if
yes.
you've made a mistake, others have a chance to help you fix it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fully with you. The listeners know we had a podcast around the number one, the top skill to lead remote workers. And it's pretty much what you say. You call it explicit. I call it over communicate. In fact, I was in Bali and I had a keynote there, and they asked the big audience of remote entrepreneurs running 100,000 plus people companies without an office. There were some, and some smaller. What's the top skill to lead remote workers? And there was I think Slido where when people give answers, the one that get more resonance get bigger on the screen. In the end, the number one word was over communicate, and then they clarified communicate not just the particular task, but communicate why we do it, the big why, because sometimes people lose the context. Then communicate
Yes.
the goal, what goal we pursue with this, not just the particular task, otherwise they start bugging each other. And then you don't see the body language, so you have to provide more content, as you said, with the assumptions. Another aspect could be explicit, give the full picture. Some of it could be asynchronous, not to waste the online time. And then once
Correct.
they're on the same page, go brainstorm, decide, and so on. So that's a
So
great.
my joke around that, I love the phrase over
Yeah,
communicate. And my phrase, by the way, this is so universal. It works in a virtual team and it works with your own spouse.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So my joke is usually if you suspect that the person you're dealing with cannot read your mind,
Mhm.
say it out loud and be explicit.
Absolutely. Particularly, I would say men are not very good at reading minds. They have to be told what to do. And the women are very good at, speaking between the lines. So I think in the family context is very relevant. We both have children. You have two beautiful kids. I have five
Correct.
daughters. Uh, is there anything, any lesson from the virtual collaboration that could be applied to the family or the other way around, apart from being explicit?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end, it comes to achieving common goals together, right?
Mhm,
That's it. So you have humans involved,
mhm,
which brings something dynamics, and then it's a question of how do you get on the same page.
mhm,
Um, Now the context is different, and the obviously when you're working with an 8-year-old, you would have a different set of considerations than if you're working with a 35-year-old brilliant PhD.
mhm,
Although I would say 8-year-olds have the benefit of just saying what's on their mind. There is no filters, there is no recalculations and recalibration. They just say it, and they're still selfish enough where they can state their needs very clearly,
mhm,
which we lose a little bit as we grow up. But a family has routines, just like a virtual team will have a routine, right?
mhm,
So you have times when we are coming together. In our family, the synchronous time is dinner time. The rest of the time, everybody's doing their own thing. The same way a team would have a synchronous time when everybody's available for each other and then they do their own thing.
mhm,
You have the family calendar. If you see
mhm,
my family calendar, you'll just be your mind will be blown. I have
mhm,
different calendars for every member of the family and where they have to be and who's taking whom where and this whole thing. Well, if you are running a business with hundreds of suppliers and millions of customers, you have something way more sophisticated that is a tool for collaboration.
mhm,
You have the culture, right? So the culture in a family is given through family traditions and the stories we tell around the Christmas tree and the fact that we have a Christmas tree, right?
mhm,
In an organizational context, leaders who are setting the tone for the culture have to be a bit more deliberate and intentional around how they role model, what are the symbolic actions, what are the visible and informal ways they reinforce how things are being done. But it is, at the end, it is a storytelling culture tradition kind of aligning through the
mhm.
values and how things get done for our company or for our family. So yeah, and I can keep going and going.
Yes, no, fantastic insights. And really, I appreciate now what the mother is doing versus the father. I don't have calendar for each of my five daughters, and I'm very grateful to my wife taking care, but apparently you have to have the two balls. No, that's great. If there is only one insight, and I keep sharing this from having six ladies at home, which brings additional dynamic, it is praise, praise, praise. Fail with criticism, same with teams, praise the result if there is a result. If there is no result yet, praise the behavior, if they support each other, being open and so on, ask for help even. If there is neither
Yes.
result nor behavior, look harder. There is always something to praise, but be authentic.
Yes, yes. You know what? This is another area where you and I appear to be on the same page. So this is the Skinner's positive psychology approach,
Mhm. Yes.
which is the idea that you can. It came from animal training. Like you can train dolphins by rewarding the most minuscule
Mhm.
movement in the positive direction, and you start with a wild animal and then after a while of positive reinforcement they're jumping through hoops of fire for you, right? The
Yes.
same way with pigeons and the same way with people.
Mhm.
And there is something to be said, although I find that different cultures, again it's so culture specific, have different ways of getting there.
Absolutely. And in virtual teams, sometimes it's easier to forget, to praise, easier to kind of not look, you have enough on your plate, so you have to be conscious as a leader. And to reinforce this as a culture, so they praise each other, and you could have some rituals about recognition and so on. Now, talking about different cultures and so on, and you've led and work with global teams, what is your most exotic, most exciting experience with a virtual or global team?
Most exotic, exciting. I, uh, man, I'd say the most complicated one
Mhm,
was one where it goes back many years, but it was a situation in which multiple parts of the same organizations were going through a drastic change of ownership, change of structure. They were carving out bits, merging bits. It was complicated.
mhm,
So I was on top of a small coordination team of, let's say, 9, 10 people.
mhm,
And then we had a small client team of, let's say, 40 people.
okay,
And then we would airlift this whole thing and we would fly around the world to all the different operations to figure out what's going on, how do they actually do things, what can be, streamlined, how do they plug in together when they merge, how do they unplug if they're carving out stuff. And that was it was very interesting because you would fly into a location and then early in the morning I would have a meeting with my own team, then we have a meeting with the broader team, then we have series of meetings with the host organization, then they'll take us out for a dinner or something like that. Then I'll stay up late into the night to write the reports and update the board or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm,
And then we all fly into the respective places and the communication continues
mhm,
online. That was the most complicated thing, I'd
mhm,
say.
mhm,
On the other hand, I can say cultural context doesn't have to be global, doesn't have to be international. It
mhm,
can be very something very small. I was working with a startup, so the
mhm.
opposite end of the spectrum,
Yep.
and we were talking about how the management should be approaching a certain topic, and all of a sudden there was a conflict that
Mhm,
appeared out of nowhere, and I'm supposed to facilitate it, and it took me a while to figure out what's going on. And then
mhm.
it turns out that the trigger word was the word reactive,
Okay.
because
Mhm,
half of the people were engineers, so
mhm,
everyone on the engineering side was reading, this is the Agile manifesto. Reactive
mhm,
is good, you're on your feet, you're on top of things, you're
mhm,
very, very fast in your iterations,
mhm,
so that. And then half of the people came from the classic business school background.
mhm,
For them, reactive is the opposite of proactive, which means
mhm,
exactly the opposite. So now they are arguing. Substantially they were saying the same thing, but it was so, like, so much conflict until I sorted out it was the trigger word, and
mhm.
it was the cultural background of engineers versus business people.
Yep.
And literally the next meeting we had, the manifesto people schooled the
Mhm,
business people on what the Agile manifesto was, and
mhm.
business people schooled the engineers on how they see the world, and it worked out that way. So here is your macro and micro example.
Fantastic. And being explicit, how it can help. So,
Exactly.
um, we touched upon Argentinian tango, so I'm not letting you off the hook on this one. What do you think? Argentinian tango is a very close dance. So, in terms of collaboration, it has to work on all levels in order to be beautiful and enjoyable for the both parties. What are the lessons from the Argentinian tango that you could apply to leadership and, if possible, to leading virtual teams?
Yes. Well, many actually. I got hooked on Argentinian tango. I had tried it a couple of times in the past before I got hooked, and it's very nice and it is fun and it's social, and it is absorbing your brain in a way that if you're a creative type, it
Mhm,
helps quiet you down and calm you. But I got hooked on it when I was making a transition in my own leadership growth, and when
mhm,
I was moving from a program manager type of situation to more of a junior partner where I have to delegate and I had to rethink what it means to lead and
mhm,
what it means to follow.
mhm,
So I had to get, comfortable with the idea that I'm no longer doing this stuff. I'm
Mhm.
following, and I was thinking about these things as I was learning tango in parallel. And in a weird way, tango was the catalyst to give me the language and the experiences
Mhm.
to make some of these personal growth connections. And I started using it. I actually use Argentine tango as examples in my training sessions. But the idea is, first of all, you have a partner. So right
Mhm.
there, you have a collaboration.
Mhm.
You have one person who is leading, which means they are proposing how to interpret the music,
Mhm.
and their job is to make sure that you don't collide with anybody else who is dancing around
Mhm.
you. And then you have a follower who is interpreting this idea and taking it further.
Mhm.
So if you think about it in a team situation, it doesn't have to be a manager and a team member. It could be
Yeah.
just in any given discussion or situation, you have somebody who is proposing an idea and somebody who is uh, accepting the idea and either
Mhm.
building on it or rejecting it.
Mhm.
So it is exactly like in a team situation. You can be on a Zoom screen, somebody says, oh, how about we do that? The
Mhm.
moment somebody else says no, but this would never work, these are the 10 reasons why it wouldn't work, the conversation fizzles out.
Yeah.
Versus if somebody says, oh, I have an idea, and somebody else says, okay, I'm not quite with you yet, but tell me more, what's going on. You keep the conversation going, and you're amplifying, and you're just, as you said, positive encouragement. Tell me more, how would this look like? You're exploring it, you
Yes.
go somewhere.
Absolutely. No, I'm fully with you, and you open a new kind of area. Argentine tango was on my list, but now with higher priority jumped on the list. And I'm usually doing with in my seminars also this yes but and yes and, which is like
Correct.
reaffirming, exploring further, and it is works very well even at home with your better half.
Correct.
But in
So
virtual
that is a
teams,
classic technique from applied improvisation, and I've been an applied improvisation practitioner for many
mhm,
many years. So I've been to conferences on yes and
yes,
yes but,
mhm,
and it is always um, a very easy thing to do and to bring into a workshop.
yeah,
The idea is, when you start phrases with yes but, everything goes down
mhm,
with yes and, you open up. In reality, yes and is just a tool, right? So while
mhm,
the ideas are better, they're not necessarily more pragmatic or more doable. So you have to pick your tools appropriately. But it is one of those small hacks
yes,
where just changing, introducing a game and saying, okay, we are brainstorming, so for the next 10 minutes,
mhm,
let's just play a game. And
yes,
whenever you hear something, just start the response with yes and you
absolutely.
go places.
No, it's yes, it unleashes creativity. People feel smarter. That's what they tell after the exercise, and it is yes, but is innovation killer. Here, really, you could go places, as you say. Fantastic. So, tell me, what is your? You've given already quite a few pearls to the audience. What would be your advice? You said explicit as a key success factor. What would be your top advice for people which lead a virtual team, lead remote workers now?
Yeah, okay. So let's take it at two levels. First, the team lead level, and then maybe even higher, leader up in the
Mhm.
organization. So for a team lead, many of the rules uh, are the same, but now you have to be even more disciplined to go
Mhm.
about it. So you still have to be very deliberate in ensuring that everybody stays connected and stays on the same page
Yes.
by explicitly discussing, what are we doing, why are we doing, why is this important, how are we doing it, who's doing what, etc. So this is about what I call about the job.
Mhm.
And then you have to explicitly take the time to talk about the team. So having the
Mhm.
conversations around, hey, what would make you
Mhm.
find this experience rewarding? What
Yeah.
is your preferred working style? Are you
Yes.
a morning person, an evening person? Are you a Slack person, or a chat person? All
Mhm.
these, like, anything from tactical to philosophical, they have to be talked through.
Yes.
Then as you go on, you have to continue to enable, and you enable in a couple of ways, right? One is, you have to make, I'll just state the obvious,
Yeah.
there's some tools that you have to have in place, and it is
Yeah.
just as basic as agreeing on how are you going to store files, how are you going to share information, how are you going to coordinate calendars, the boring stuff. It's one of those things, if it works, you don't notice it. If it doesn't work, everybody gets stripped.
Yes.
Going beyond that, we said team charter, individual kind of team motivation, but then you have to monitor this, right? So you have to monitor ongoing performance. How are we doing? What's going on? Can we readjust? And then on the team well-being, you have to create the time for them to connect, the time for them to rest, the time for them to do whatever they need to do to be at their peak performance level. So that implies that you have the ongoing processes and rituals and communications and all that. And every team is different.
Yes.
I don't think there is like, here's the 10 things you have to do. It is the thing you have to do is you have to create the situation for a team to sit down and say, okay, how do we want to do this? How do we want to do that? What's working, what's not working?
Yes.
So that's at the team level.
Yep.
And then if you extract that now at the leadership level, at the top of the organization, there your job is to enable and galvanize. That's it. How do you enable? I mean, the next level of the tools would be enable the technology. So, I mean, I'll be very tactical here. It used to be you join a company and what you're given is a badge and you're assigned a desk working space, right? And now you're given a catalog of, do you want this home desk chair or that home desk chair? Do you want this standing desk or that standing? Do you want this camera or that camera? Here is the ring light, here is the microphone, blah, blah, blah. It is like a customizable office in a box. That is a new ball game, but it's the same idea. You enable the technological interface of your folks.
Yes.
Then I think we should bring back the second item around culture and setting the norms and role modeling explicitly. Going out of your way to role model. Whether it is the positive reinforcement, whether it is setting hard rules around when is work time and when is recover time, whether it is, I just heard some Silicon Valley clients are saying there'll be no Zoom on Friday, period, because we are all zoomed out and we are zombies. That's my word, instead of zombies, we are all zombies, right? So there is the, how do you lead by example? And then the last thing at the leadership level, we'll be thinking through the talent aspects, right? So now in this new environment, that does impact how you think about selecting people. So people who are more comfortable working this way. How do you train people? So all of a sudden, in addition to all the evergreen, how do you lead a team? How do you motivate people? How do you chunk a job into roles, etc.? You have to train them on cultural sensitivity of a Zoom screen and things like that. So there is a lot of training. And then the performance management is changing a bit as well. I hate the monitoring, kind of the surveillance, activity surveillance tools that are propping up. I don't think that's the way to go. Maybe there is a place for it, but we have to rethink collectively performance management in this new virtual world.
Great insights for team managers and for senior leaders. Now we've touched upon the new normal, how the new now selecting talents and so on. What is your bet on the new normal? Will we have, completely virtual remote workers and less in the office? Or what would be the percentage from your perspective, office workers, remote workers, and what other dynamics do you think will come into play?
So first of all, I have a pet peeve. I don't call it new normal. I call it now normal, because the now normal changes. It has always changed, been changing. It continues to change. What we experienced was a shock change, but it's always changing. I do think that the genie is out of the bottle. There is no way turning back. I said at the beginning, we had virtual team adoption curves. There have been virtual teams for many years. Just like, the iPhone was adopted by a few early on, and then the masses adopted it, and there's no way we can live without smartphones anymore. The same way, we won't be able to live without virtual teams. Not to mention that, companies like my husband's have announced work from home forever.
Mhm.
So there's actual
Yes.
structural changes. So what do I think? I think there will be a period, engineering speak, there will be a transition period where
Mhm.
we'll be swinging one way or another, trying to find
Mhm.
the setup that works best for us.
Mhm.
At the end, it will come to personal preferences and company culture and just business imperatives. Let's not forget there are many, many occupations where you have to go into the office or you have to go on site. So
Mhm.
that would change a portion of your job. Then there are the people like us, the creatives, the conference room types, the conference room types, and the sitting at a desk, coders, engineers, things. I think there we will see changes, but we will have both the in-person component and we will have the virtual component. So I think over the coming months and years, we'll sit down and we will think through what is best done in which setting. So building relationships, yeah, I love the Zoom catch-ups and whatnot. I find that it is easier to maintain relationships over Zoom, not build them, and it's not the same, right? So I think that there'll be live events again.
Mhm.
um, at the same time, I find that productivity is higher on certain tasks when you're at home and uninterrupted and you just go and do it. So I think that
Mhm.
people will be smart in separating what gets done how in each environment.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that is just kind of a concurrent trend is the
Mhm.
whole idea of diversity and inclusion.
Mhm.
And I think that that would blur with the idea of distributed teams, because one way to think about inclusion is how do you include your virtual team members if you have on-site team members?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, pragmatically, if you have a video conference and you have a choice of having two people who are on site joining together in the conference room and the other two are on their laptops from home, do
Mhm.
you have a norm where everybody stays at their desk?
Mhm.
It's just tactical stuff like that. And again, it will be clarified by every single team and every single company based on the context.
Mhm.
But to summarize, I think it will be a transition. So we'll be swinging back and forth as people are
Mhm.
clarifying what works and what doesn't and what makes them happy.
Mhm.
And it will depend on the situation.
Yeah, fantastic insights. And for a fact, I've spoken to some global clients of mine who also said, no coming back. Like for your husband, the site as you know it will not be there. So be ready, which forced them to make some career choices and bold moves, as you say, because some people enjoy and thrive on this in-person communication. So yeah, question will be what to do together. What is the best way to do it together? Like brainstorming, strategic roadmap, and so on. Not necessarily, because the tools get more and more sophisticated, and you could sometimes, do those brainstormings even faster online. But that would be a key questions. Where do we need to be together, and where, as you say,
Yeah.
productivity.
And
Um,
I think about, I mean, not to get too esoteric, but I think about it that space time continuum, right? So we have synchronous and asynchronous in terms of time, and we have on site and online in terms of space. And now we have different setups, and I think we'll come up with many new different ways of collaborating. For example, side by side quiet independent work of a video conference.
mhm,
This is a thing now because people find that they lack the motivation when they're stuck at home and they
mhm,
cannot sit down and focus. So
mhm,
they I know of engineering teams who would have a tandem software team, so you have a buddy and you basically sit there and you're doing your own thing, but you're on video channel all the time with your tandem partner, and
mhm,
that keeps you motivated and less isolated and all that. That didn't exist before. At least I don't remember seeing it. So I think that we will see innovation. We will see new ways of working pop up, and then we'll see what sticks and what doesn't.
mhm. Great insights. What do you read or listen at the moment? What gives you inspiration?
I am on a big podcast binge.
Mhm.
Wave. I uh, as COVID hit and we were all put on a stay-at-home order, basically the only pleasure in life left for physical activity with everything closed, no tango, no gym, etc., is to enjoy walks.
Yeah.
And podcasts are a terrific companion to a walk. I find you wouldn't be surprised, but anything that deals with business and growth and problem solving, economic development, interesting and
Yeah.
exciting. And I have favorites. Let's see. In terms of just general economics, I like Planet Money. It's a podcast by NPR, and they make it super accessible. I mean, like a high schooler can understand what they're talking about, which takes making it simple. It's not simple, right? So that takes some art, and I appreciate that. In terms of decision making, I really like there is a podcast sponsored by Charles Schwab, but it has nothing to do with financials. It is called Choiceology, and it explores the different cognitive biases that we have as decision makers. And again, me thinking about strategic decision making, that's super relevant. And then in the genre of random, interesting, exciting things. Can you believe people are doing that? Science Friday is another podcast where they spotlight all these scientists who are working on the quirkiest, most fundamental, basic research things that you could not even imagine somebody would spend their day and night doing. And that's a great kind of change, shift of perspective for me.
Excellent. So we'll share all these links with our listeners and viewers. Great. Last question. It's futuristic. We've touched upon, but now, what do you think is the future of virtual teams?
The future. The future is anything that deals with the human side of humanity stays. Interpersonal relationship, trust, need to feel acknowledged, need to be recognized, the drive to succeed, the drive to learn, all those things constant. What will change is the tool stack of how we interact will change. So we may be avatars, we may have virtual reality, we may actually interact in some sort of a mixed reality where it feels real to us, although we are separated. I don't know. The future is out there. Many of the predictions that are currently being made on what percentage of the work will go virtual and what cannot get virtual and all that, that is all based on with existing technology. I think that the technology will change. So we don't know what we don't know, but I bet that 10 years from now we'll be interacting in a very, very different way.
Excellent insight. So technology stacks changes, but treating people as holistic human beings with all their needs and trusting each other remains stable, and it has a success factor for effective virtual teams. Aneta Key, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you for the great insights. We will share your details with the audience. I wish you all the best, and a big virtual power hack from me here from Hamburg.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And speaking of virtual power hug, I actually invented a Zoom team hug. I can show you how you do it. You put everyone in a gallery view. So you have everyone is in a little box. And then you ask people to cross hands like that. So if you can do that, in fact, I will put you in a gallery view. And when you have many boxes, we are next to each other. And now we try to kind of touch fingers. See?
Yes.
And that's a virtual hug. And it takes a while for people to do it because A, the image is mirror for somebody. B, when you're in this cross lateral position, your brain is messed up. And then you're trying to touch hands and everybody's doing this. It's about 20 seconds of giggles, and it's a super fun way to, kill 20 seconds while somebody's opening up the next presentation or something.
Absolutely. No, fantastic. And because it's virtual, this is something tangible. And as you say, people laugh. It's a great icebreaker, great to be more tangible, just not just visual. So appreciate this advice. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic evening.
You too. Good luck with your 5 kids. Bye.
Bye for now.